Hi everybody, welcome back. So in this video we're going to continue working on our Fred line chart with two elements of reactivity, and we're going to be working specifically on the user interface. And remember, the two elements of reactivity for this app are going to be that drop down menu where users can select which of these indicators they want to chart, and then the slider at the bottom which allows them to select the date. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and get started. So we'll say define the UI for our Fred line chart, and we're going to start here with an object UI, and we're going to use our fluidPage function, and everything in the UI is going to be enveloped in that function. Okay, and then within fluidPage we're going to start with an application title, and we're going to call this, we're going to call title panel Fred data app, or whatever you want to call it. And then next, what we want to do is we want to create the drop-down menu. And so for that, to create the drop-down menu, we're going to use the fluid row function, right? And remember, the fluid row function creates a horizontal container with 12 potential columns, right? And so whatever columns we create within this container should add up to 12, all right? And we're only going to have one row in this app, so we're just going to have one fluid row call, and then we're going to define our two elements within that, two columns within this horizontal container. Hopefully that makes sense, but if it doesn't, then it will in a second. So first we're going to do, so we have 12 columns, and then we're going to say the panel, the drop down menu panel, or you could say well panel, will take 4 columns. All right, and so we're going to call column, and we're going to specify 4 for 4 columns, and then we're going to call well panel, all right, and then within that we are going to have an input. We're going to call select input to create our drop down. All right, so select our drop down menu, select input, and we're going to call this input indicator so that we can call it later on, right? And then what the users are going to see is indicator. That's what's going to be above the drop down menu for the users. And then we're going to populate this drop down with our list of variables up here. So that third argument is vars, okay? All right, and then from there, let's do a comma, and then one other thing that I want to include here, let's give ourselves a little space, is some help text. And this is mainly to tell the user what to do with the app, to give them some instructions, but also to say a little bit about the data, because we want to acknowledge the OECD as being a source of some of these data. So let's call help text, and we'll say select an indicator, choose a date range, and view the trend, period. All right, and from there we can say the gray bars, let's say the gray bars represent economic recessions. All right, The data for this app comes from the St. Louis Fed's Fred database. The consumer confidence, business confidence, and lead composite indicators are OECD data downloaded through Fred. All right. So now the user knows all about the data and where they come from. And then, so that is the closing parentheses for the help text. Okay, and then we need a comma. No, we don't need a comma after that. We're fine. And then we have the closing parentheses for the column. Okay, so we should be good there. And then put a comma after the closing parentheses for the column. All right, and now we're going to say the remaining 8 columns. We don't have to spell out 8. 8 columns will be occupied by the plot. All right. And now we're going to build the, we'll call it the main panel, where the plot is going to display, and we're also going to build, as part of that, the slider input that the user is going to see or be able to manipulate underneath the plot. Okay, so column 8 and plot output. There we go. And we want our plot, we're going to call our plot output line chart. Okay, that's how we'll reference it later on. All right, and let's give ourselves a little bit of room here. And then slider input is the next thing we're going to type, and this is to build that slider underneath the plot. All right, and we're going to call this input range. All right, so the input for our drop down is going to be called indicator, and the input for our slider is going to be called range. All right, that's how we'll reference it later on. In terms of what the user is going to see, we don't really want a title over the slider, so let's just leave that blank. All right, and then we have to specify for the slider a min, a max, and a range. All right, so min equals start date, which we set up earlier. We said the start date is going to be January 1st, 1970, and we said that the end date is going to be the system date, whatever today's date is. So min is going to be start date, max is going to be end date, and then the range here is specified as value. Value equals C, start date, end date. All right, comma, and then we need one more argument here, which is width. How much of the plot is this slider going to take up? Is it going to be the entire width of the plot or only a portion of it? And we're going to say it's going to be the entire width, so we're going to say 100%. All right, and so that's the slider input. That's the end of the column input. And let's see, what else do we have here? Make sure all these parentheses line up. That's the end of the fluid row. All right, and then let's see, this is the end of the fluid page, and that is our entire UI. Okay. All right, and again, we're not going to run this right now. We are not done with the code yet. We still need to build the server function, which is what we're going to do in the next video. I'll see you there.